Here we go.
I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the hype, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 21, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the hype, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah.
And there it is. Welcome all on this Thursday evening to Loaded Mag NUFC, the away days preview. The boys are back. Brandy and Blaze are officially in the house. 23-24 season is upon us. Welcome everyone into the chat. Great to have you all with us. We'll run through a few names in just a second. But Mr. Chris Horn, how are you today? How are things? And how excited are you about this game, this big game on Saturday evening?
I'm very good, mate. Yeah, very, very good. Just back from a trip to Newcastle, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So I was in Newcastle Monday to Wednesday, which was lovely, with my wife and daughter Summer. So that was really nice. Although it was really weird going to Newcastle for non-football related purposes, which seemed strange, but no, it was lovely. Really, really nice. In terms of the match, mate, yeah. I mean, like I jumped on with you and LB then, and straight in. I was like, can't wait for Saturday. Very, very, very excited. And do you know what? And we've said this for ages, haven't we? And this is one of our first feelings, Pete. You know, when we got the takeover, it's just so nice to be competing. It's nice going into the game at the weekends and feeling like we've got half a chance. Whereas if this was 2-3 years ago, it would have just been like, how many are they going to score? You know, are we going to score? Maybe we'll get a corner. Who knows? But now it feels like we're really up there and we're really trying to mix it with the big boys, so to speak. So now I'm really looking forward to Saturday.
Definitely. I'm the same. Absolutely buzzing. Cannot wait. I'm excited about testing ourselves alongside the treble winners at the Etihad. And look, we've got LB. It's just going to come on in just a second. But of course, we've got to say a big shout out to everyone in the chat. We've got the likes of Chairs, welcome in. We've got Craig Lee, standard, always in the chat. The Mighty Win, great to have you in there. Yano's in the house. Brett's in the house. Jason's there. PDK, yes, always puts the brandy glass up there. Great to have you in there as well. Of course, Lisa, thank you for joining me on Sai's channel earlier. Great to have you in there in the chat supporting, as was Jordy Team for Life and one or two others. Kamal's in the house. We've got Jamie, Mark Todd, Ewan, and many, many more. I can see John in there too. But look, away days isn't away days without having the opposition's view, and I'm delighted to bring in making his debut on Loaded Mag NUFC, LB from It's LB YouTube channel, Man City fan. How you doing this fine evening, my friend?
Yeah, man, I'm very well. I'm very well, lads. Thank you for having me on, man. And big up the chat. Hopefully everyone's having a good night, man.
Definitely. Great to have you on to talk all things Man City and Newcastle. But look, we've got to talk about first and foremost from a Man City point of view, and then we'll flip to Newcastle in just a second. Obviously, coming off the back of the Super Cup win. Is your head a little bit sore after all the celebrations and winning yet another trophy? What does that trophy mean to you? Did it mean nothing, or is that kind of set you boys up for the season ahead?
Well, listen, bro, I'm telling you now, mate, it never gets boring of winning trophies. You these people, proper. I don't think they're real football fans, mate, people who say, "Oh, it must be boring to support City." Like, what? In what world do you think it's boring to win trophies? Like, you must support a club that's never won trophies, or you just don't get it. Like, the aim of sport is to win. You know what I mean? And I've come from watching my club win absolutely nothing to now just winning pretty much every single competition that we're in. And I'm not a mug. I know it won't last forever. You know what I mean? I'm very aware of the fact that when Pep Guardiola leaves, we will have a dip. I don't think we'll have a dip as big as maybe like Man United did, because I think we'll actually have a plan, unlike them. And our transition will actually be easier. But mate, it's so good. It's so good to win the trophies. And you mentioned last night, where does it rank? It's a good question. It's obviously nowhere near as big as the Champions League or Premier League. That's obvious. For me, I'd put it under the FA Cup. I'd probably sort of put that trophy last night sort of on a par with the Carabao Cup. I think that's where it is for me personally. But some City fans, I guess as well, depends maybe where you're from. You know what I mean? We had a lot of international fans in the show last night on the watch along in the chat, who had it above the Carabao Cup. And then I noticed a lot of people from the UK sort of had it on maybe a par with the Carabao Cup. So maybe that's something to do with that. I don't know. But yeah, man, winning trophies, which you guys obviously will experience again very soon with the money, is class, man.
That's the thing. Like, I'm with you. I want to get Chris's opinion on this. Like, I'm with you. Like, winning trophies, like that's the big. This is what we support football for. Like, we support football for winning trophies. But like, Chris, from your perspective, do you kind of see us a little bit like City on our trajectory with what we're doing at this moment in time is potentially being in that position that City are? City are 10 years down the road with this, with what they've been doing, more than 10 years down the road. Can you envision in your mind, is in maybe 10 years time, doing what LB's doing, where we just like another trophy in the cabinet, another one ticked off the list? Like, I can't vision it. I want to, I can't. I don't know what you're thinking about.
Do you know what? It's funny you're saying that, Pete, because I'm like you. Like, you know, I think we all kind of feel that that's the path we're on. But to actually, you know, sit there and think, like, imagine what it's going to be like when we win our first trophy, given that it's been so long. You know, like it is bizarre to think about, and like it's kind of like me heart's kind of saying, yeah, it's going to happen, it's definitely going to happen, whatever, and then my head's holding me back. But then the difficulty I'm having at the moment, as I'm sure you are, and maybe LB will agree, I don't know, it's difficult not to kind of see that happening because of what we're seeing week in, week out. Like that Aston Villa game last week, I'm still buzzing off that Aston Villa game last week because it was just so emphatic, and all we were hearing before was Villa have made some fantastic signings. Villa have had a better window than Newcastle. Villa are going to finish, you know, in the top 4 ahead of Newcastle, blah, 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 blah. And then we just go and put them to the sword like that. And, you know, so automatically you get excited. And I'll tell you what, if we manage to pick something up from the game this weekend, I think it's going to feel even more close. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, deep down in our heart of hearts, we're probably all thinking, yes, City probably will win this weekend. But then there's also that doubt that, you know, because we're like accustomed to feel that way and we're accustomed to think that way because that's all we've had over the years. But now, because of what we're seeing on the pitch, you know, with the new owners, with Eddie Howe, you know, the whole city's behind the team. I think we're all thinking, yeah, but what if? What if we do get something? And then what kind of run are we going to go on? Because then whoever we face, if we go to the Etihad and we get something, whoever we face coming up, we're just going to be like, bring it on.
Just quickly on that, Chris, can I just come in on that one? Do you know when you mentioned about Villa strengthening? I think this is a sort of issue in football when fans talk about teams, because I'm noticing this with City. What I'm noticing from people's views is that when they put a club, right, who was better than another club side by side, but this club has improved, they go, oh, this team is now better. They kind of forget that actually, even if you just stand still, if this team is better than this other team, just because they've improved doesn't mean that this team is worse. And I'm seeing that personally a lot with City at the moment. Now, I'm just saying this as an example. People are talking about, you know, Arsenal have improved, signing Declan Rice, Timber, who's injured now. They've got Havertz in. They're probably going to make some more signings. what have City done? What have City done? Well, hang on a minute. I know we've lost a couple of players, but we're still a very, very good team. We just won the treble. So I think actually it's two different sort of teams, Arsenal and City and Newcastle and Villa, but they're very similar. I think people gas teams up too much when they've improved without giving the respect to the other team. And I think that's probably what you've seen there with the Aston Villa and the Newcastle comparison.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that's a fair assessment. Pete, just before you move on, a little bit of breaking news.
Super chat received. Super chat received.
I had to remember to take that off. I forgot that it stays on. To Jimmy, our friend Jimmy and Blaze. All you need is me on to bring the old fans forum days back. Let's bring in Hall. Absolutely, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Very, very kind of you, mate. And thanks for tuning in.
Top man. Great to have you in the chat. Love it. Any super chats? Put a question on there or a comment, just like Jimmy. And whilst we're here, we might as well do the housekeeping. We've got 140 in here already, and it's rising. Make sure you click the like and click subscribe. We're on our way now to 7K and beyond. So help us on the way if you're new to the channel. Right. Before LB came in and made a really, really good point about that in terms of that hierarchy where you see where people see teams. And Toonami mentions, hi all, hope you're well. Looking forward to the game on Saturday. She thinks it's going to be 2-1 to Newcastle. Just two more players to come in. How are the lads? One big surprise to come in. She thinks in terms of the transfer market. We'll get onto that in just a second. But the excitement and the confidence in us going to Man City, like I've not seen this before. Not saying we're going to win, but the excitement and the confidence about it is kind of rumbling away within the Newcastle fans because of how we started and the way it is. But LB, in your opinion, just flipping back to Newcastle now, what have you made of Newcastle in the last year or so? But also, what have you made to them against Villa? And I'm going to ask you this question: are you worried about Newcastle on Saturday?
I'll answer that question first because it's easier. Yeah, obviously.
I thought you were going to say no, then LB.
Yeah. Oh, when I go live on my channel later on, I'll be like, no, it'll be an easy win. Yeah, I mean, what was the question? What have I thought of Newcastle over the last year? Is that what you said? Yeah. Good, man. Obviously, very, very good. I think Eddie Howe has done a great job. I think he's done a fantastic job. He didn't get sort of sucked into the hype of maybe a title race. I've been referencing the Emirates performance where Newcastle went to the Emirates last year, and at the time I can't remember where you were in the league, but you was high up, and I remember listening to Talk Sport, and a couple of people were saying, "Are they in a title race? Are they not?" And he went there, and he went for the draw, got the draw, and Newcastle were lucky not to win it. Joe Linton had a header just before half time, really should have scored. And after the game, he said, "We're not in a title race," and I thought that was clever. Some people might think, why did he do that? You know what I mean? He should have gone there and tried to win the game. He could have been in a title race. But what he's doing is he's managing expectations. That's what he's doing. No one expected Newcastle to be in a title race last year. Do you know what I mean? And he went there, and at the end of the game, and there was a lot of criticism because of the performance, but
we know
everyone saw, and everyone just come away from the game, and I thought he'd done a really good job. I thought the signings that he's made in the summer have been great. I've been talking about Harvey Barnes for years, saying that he needed to make a move. I thought he stayed at Leicester far too long, and I think that's a great signing. And of course, he come on, didn't he, against Villa, and done well. Livramento, Pete, I'm pretty sure we've had discussions before on the 12th man about. I think that's a great signing. Strengthens the team for what you've currently got, and it's all about building that squad. It's all great having a starting 11 that's good, but if the squad ain't up to it, then that's a serious problem. And of course, Tonali is the big sort of golden ticket. Obviously, I thought when he played against Villa, nice goal, could have had a second, and looked like he settled in nicely. Obviously, time will tell it just to see exactly how he does settle in. But listen, I think that Newcastle are going about things the right way. It will be interesting to see how he plays at the Etihad on Saturday. Will he come to us and do what he did at the Emirates and just sort of park the bus and just try and take a point, which would be a great point for Newcastle? or second game, you've won the first one, or does he go for it? So, yeah, obviously Eddie Howe doing a great job, Newcastle in a great position. And as I've said to you in the past, Pete, it's all about patience, mate, because at some point you will be winning the trophies. Don't rush it. You've got a plan, clearly. Stick to the plan. And I know some fans might be getting a bit eager, saying, we've got all this money, go spend it or whatever. Stick to the plan, man. Look at clubs. Spending money doesn't always guarantee success. You know what I mean? Look at Everton, look at Man United, look at Chelsea. You've got a plan. We've had a plan. And now look at us. You know what I mean? So stay patient.
Love it. Love it. Look, if you haven't heard LB before, get on the 12th man and watch us, because LB knows his stuff. He knows ball, that's for sure. And I think most Newcastle fans, particularly everyone in the chat, we've got 160 plus watching right now, will echo your thoughts with regards to Newcastle. So I think you've kind of you've touched on Newcastle perfectly there. But Chris, I'm going to come to you, because LB made a really good point. He talked about last season. You know what, LB? I wish you were there on the Race for Europe last season, man. Because after that Emirates game, I got hammered on the Race for Europe. The back of that, we got obliterated for sitting back and taking that 0-0. But I wish you were there, because you backed up my points that I made.
To be fair, I don't know what I said after the game. To be fair, at the time, I might have been saying the same thing. But like when you look back at it, you go, on hindsight, it was, I think, the correct decision.
Yeah, definitely. But you touched on a really good point there, and Chris, I want to come to you about this, is because LB said it's going to be interesting to see how Eddie Howe sets us up on Saturday. Is he going to come and he didn't park the bus at the Emirates, but he came to make it difficult and frustrate Arsenal, or is he going to go and play the type of football we played against Aston Villa and go, you know what, let's do what we did at St James's Park last season and go at them and go toe to toe? What are your thoughts about that? It's a really interesting point.
Yeah, it is. I'll touch on the Arsenal thing when I finish, but I think he's going to go toe to toe. I really do, because for me, I think with the signings we brought in, our tails are up. Fantastic result against Villa last week. I think obviously City have got to be respected, but one of, if not the best team in Europe. You don't just open out when you go to the Etihad, but I do think that. Some people say that attack is the best form of defense, and I do believe that. If we just sit back and play 5 or 6 behind the ball, City will eventually pick us off. We kind of saw that with Seville yesterday, because Seville, sat very, very deep and they were going on the counter. And to be fair to them, they were countering really, really well. But you can't keep doing that against City, because City will break you down, and because they've got such quality. And to be fair, they did come up with a really good goal from Cole Palmer, but. I think we'll have a go at City, and I think that now there's a confidence within the team, within the fan base. I think Eddie Howe will try and cause City problems. The fact that Bruyne's going to be out is a massive plus for us. I know we'll probably touch on that later, but I think there's chinks there that we can get at within the armory, and I think rather than sitting back and going for the points, I think Eddie Howe will probably try and attack them full throttle. It wouldn't surprise me if we went defensive, if we say went 1-0 up. I hope we don't do that. I hope we just, keep going as we are. But, we are talking about a high-quality City side. And just to finish on the Arsenal point from last season, I still couldn't get over the reaction of us turning up to the Emirates and playing the way we did. Because you don't, I think at the time Arsenal were top, correct me if I'm wrong. And, you don't just turn up and just, try and take on a team who are high flying, one of the best in the league, and try and beat them when you haven't really got the the credentials within your team to kind of do that. You can't match them man for man. So the fact that we turned up and we did what we did, and everyone was mainly it was Arteta, wasn't it? Arteta was going, I can't believe they did that, and it was a disgrace that they played like this because they just wanted to stop us playing football. But why not? That's within our gift, isn't it? We didn't have a multi-million pound team at that time. And I'm sure this season it may be different because, we're longer in the Eddie Howe period. We've brought in new players, but teams should be allowed to turn up and play however they wish, as long as they've got 11 players on the field, however they wish to play their football.
You're hearing that, Pops. Potts is in the chat right now. Are you hearing that? Because you gave me stick. Listen to what Chris Warner's got to say. Listen to what LB's got to say.
No, you know what it is? Yeah, I tell you what it is, Pete, right? When you support a team like City and Arsenal that play football the way that we do, we want teams in an ideal world to come and try and play expansive football against us. And that's what Eddie Howe used to do at Bournemouth. And check the scoreline at the Etihad Stadium every time Manchester City played Bournemouth. Yeah. Lucky he didn't get into double digits some of the games.
Yeah.
So that's why. But as Chris said, there's absolutely nothing wrong. There's no certain set way of playing football. You know what I mean? If you want to go direct, long ball, no problem. You want to play out from the back, no problem. There's no rule book on how you have to play. So you're spot on, mate.
Really. Yeah, so Mark's not in the chat. Mark, the Arsenal fan who normally pops in, he always pops in and plugs the channel, but always says that we're anti-football after that one game. He refers to us now as anti-football as the Arsenal fan. But look, it is what it is. But I think LB, Chris, you spot on, and I echo exactly what you boys have said. Look, there's a few other things we're going to talk about for sure. We're going to get into the game in just a second. But Chris, is there any questions in the chat for LB? Because look, we know what our chatters are like. They like to put questions in for our brilliant guests. So anything that kind of stands out for you that you want to throw at LB?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a good few questions here for LB. One of them here as well, LB, I'm going to throw this one at you, and I'm particularly interested to hear the answer to this because I was listening to this on TalkSport myself when I was driving earlier. With City playing last night, do you expect the players to be a little bit tired with them not having much of a break to prepare for Saturday's game? And I know that Pep's come out and said something, hasn't he? And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, LB.
I mean, the answer to the question, I guess, is yeah, we probably are going to be tired, but we've been doing this now for over a decade. We've just won the treble last year. So this is just something you have to deal with. You know what I mean? If we don't win the game, it won't be because we played the Super Cup yesterday. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, the scheduling is silly. You know what I mean? We've just played a Super Cup on the Wednesday night, and then we've got a game on the Saturday. It should really be the Sunday. But
It's what Pep said here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't get, you know, the league doesn't help us. I guess the league doesn't have to help us. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, we've been dealing with this. You guys will have to deal with it now in the Champions League. Like, it is what it is. You can't. I'm not one of these people who start going to moan too much. Yeah, we all know City probably should play on the Sunday if you play Champions League on the Wednesday. But listen, this has never changed since the Premier League's begun. They're not going to change it tomorrow. So you just got to deal with it, man. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
We've got another good one here from Tom Dixon. So, and this has gone quiet unless LB you tell us otherwise. Will Man City buy anyone else, and who do you think will be shown the exit door? Obviously, we've seen a couple of high-profile names leave, like Gundogan and Mahrez. But like, is there any links on anyone coming in for Man City?
Yeah, I think Lucas Paqueta from West Ham is all but signed, and I think we'll get him in. I think that's going to be a really important signing for us, and I think people are massively underestimating just how important he's going to be for us. And have the impact, especially Kevin De Bruyne's obviously injured, as you mentioned. He's going to be out now until 2024. And I think he's a good player, you know, Lucas Paqueta. So I think that's going to be a super addition. Of course, we're going to overpay, but everyone overpays for everyone these days. And Jeremy Doku looks like he's probably going to join Manchester City as well. He played on Saturday for Stade Rennes against FC Metz, watched the game, looked very, very good. And then when he got subbed off, he gave the captain a hug and then give the stadium like a 360 clap to all the fans in the stadium. And then on Twitter, all the FC Stade Rennes fans were saying that basically, yeah, see it a bit like good luck in Manchester. So it seems like we're going to get him. As for departures, I think Cole Palmer now is the only real one. It looks like Bernardo Silva's going to sign a new contract, as is Kyle Walker. So Cole Palmer, will he leave on loan? Will he be sold? Not sure, but whoever gets him, we've got a serious player on their hands. I've watched him since he's been about 16, something like that in the academy, and he's a top player. Scored a goal, good goal, underrated goal yesterday in the Super Cup, getting himself in the penalty area. He's got a nice goal against Arsenal in the Community Shield as well. So, yeah, that's it for outgoings, I think. Just Cole Palmer.
Oh, sorry, Pete, go on.
No, I was going to say, I was on the chat tonight with on Saeed's channel with Gunnar Lee. He was hammering Cole Palmer. I didn't watch the game because we did a show last night, so I didn't actually properly watch the game, but apparently they were hammering Cole Palmer, saying he was shite for while she was on the pitch. I don't know because I didn't watch it.
I thought he had a good game.
He was probably our best attacking player, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's probably them just trying to get a rise out of Daps and all the rest of it.
Yeah, probably, man. Probably.
But yeah, they were saying that. But was he not linked with West Ham? Was he linked with?
Yeah, he's been linked with West Ham and he's been linked with Brighton. I think the problem with Brighton is they are reluctant because of the way they do business to accept any sort of buyback clause in there. And fair play to Brighton. They're not really desperate. They can pick and choose who they want and get the best deals for them as an incoming. I think West Ham, obviously, given the fact that I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I still don't think they've signed anyone. And the fans are already having a meltdown. That they may be a little bit more open to having some sort of buyback clause. We were going to sell them Carlos Borges before he went to Ajax, and he had a buyback clause in there. So I think if I had to pick the two, I think he'll probably end up at West Ham purely on sort of like a business deal for City. But he's a great player.
I think James Ward-Prowse has gone to West Ham. I think that's signed.
Is that actually done now? Yeah.
And Edson Alvarez as well from Ajax.
Yes,
I think
Alvarez. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they literally only gone through like the last week, though, aren't they? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
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 In terms of Paqueta, how much are they talking, LB?
Mate, get a dart and throw it at the dartboard. That's the new one, isn't it? No one has a clue. Who knows? 70 million, 100 million. I don't know, mate. How do you? I don't know what the value is anymore. Like the transfer values are crazy. How some of these values are come up with, how they make them up, I don't know. So, literally no idea what the fee is going to be. Well, I do. It's going to be around 80 million quid. It's the thing is so, mate. Right? If you look at his stats for Brazil, very good stats for Brazil. His stats at Lyon were also very impressive. His stats at West Ham are actually not even that bad, considering that he was playing with like Antonio and that last year. You put him in the Manchester City team with Erling Haaland, he's probably going to get some serious numbers. He's only 24 years old, which I think people forget at times. You know what I mean? Which I didn't even realize he was 25. I thought he was a bit older, like 27 or something. So this is a player, serious talent, and I think it's an exciting one for us because it's a bit of a risk. A lot of our signings when we sign players, they're kind of like not boring, but like you kind of know what you're going to get. Like Haaland, we signed Haaland. I say not boring, but like, did anyone really think this guy wasn't going to score goals? Like when we signed other players, De Bruyne, we knew that he was going to come in and create chances. We didn't realize how good he was going to be. With Paqueta, I think it's really like, I really don't know what I'm going to get with this guy. And similar can be said about Jeremy Doku. If we get him 40 million, what's he going to be like? He's a bit like of an explosive character. So I'm really excited with these potential two signings.
Yeah.
Look, Chris, we know about Lucas Paqueta because it was in our first transfer window with the new ownership. He was the guy that we thought we were going to go for, and then all of a sudden we pull out Bruno Guimaraes, and nobody's arguing about that. But then the summer window comes about. You got Lucas Paqueta in Bruno Guimaraes' garden in Newcastle, wearing the top, when everyone thinks it's a done deal. He doesn't go. He doesn't come to Newcastle. We then go. He then goes to West Ham. We get Alexander Isak instead. No Newcastle fans arguing about that. I certainly am not. But I do think that there'll be a little bit of what if with Newcastle fans. Is that kind of what your thoughts are with Lucas Paqueta, knowing now that he's going to a team like City, potentially and looking to tear it up?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, when we got Bruno in, none of us were expecting that, and Bruno hit the ground running, didn't he? And Bruno's been absolutely brilliant, and we know how close Bruno and Paqueta are. And I think deep down we always thought, didn't we? Oh, we'll get him next window, or we'll get him the window after, and it's just never quite panned out like that. And then he joins West Ham, and even some fans were still saying, "Oh, we'll just buy him off West Ham." And now that he's going to Man City, I agree with LB in that. I think Paqueta was one of the shining lights for West Ham last season in a very poor West Ham side. Lawless won't like me saying that. But they went and won the conference, and that's fantastic. They did really well to do that. But I think putting Lucas Paqueta in a team surrounded by Manchester City players, you're automatically going to see a better player, aren't you? We see for Brazil that he pulls the strings for them. He's always one of the standout players, and he's highly thought of by the Brazil national team. So I think if he joins Man City, we're going to see a lot better version of Lucas Paqueta. Even towards the back end of last season and the first game last week, you can see there's a player there, and now he's acclimatized. He's used to the Premier League. the speed, the aggression. I think he's only going to go from strength to strength, and I can't actually believe he's only 24. I did actually think he was older than that. So
I think he's 24.
I think him and Bruno are similar. But I think there's similar age. I think Bruno's just turned 25, so I think Paqueta is close to being 25. But yeah,
Paqueta's 25 as well. Actually, yeah.
Oh yeah, he must have just turned 25 then, because I knew they were the same age. 25, great age. Great age. I just want to turn tack for a second, Chris. I don't know if you want to.
Just one more thing, Pete. Just one more thing, which I've just got to highlight just before we move on.
Super chat received.
Another super chat received, this time from Colin Nichol. So, Colin, big, massive thank you to you, mate. Much appreciated. But get your comments in, Colin. Get them comments in so that we can read them out. We always say to people, if they do a super sticker or a super chat, get your comments in and we'll read them out on the screen.
Colin's a superb donated to the channel. Really, really appreciate it. But he never puts a comment in ever. Never puts a question in. So look,
one day
later on.
One day,
yeah, just the one. Just put one in, just one time. I want to just switch tack just for a second because we haven't touched on it, and a lot of Newcastle fans will be talking about it and excited about it. I want to get your thoughts, Chris, in particular. Also want to get your thoughts on this, LB. And it's the news that kind of like rocked us last night into today. And it's, Newcastle and Chelsea reaching an agreement on a fee for the 18-year-old Lewis Hall, left back at Chelsea, understood to be around 28 million initially. And obviously, it's got a lot of talks in the last hour or so. It's been talked about on Sky, saying it's a loan with a view to buy. So loaning him with a view to making it permanent in the summer, with an obligation to make it permanent in the summer. Look, Chris, from your perspective here in the news, we didn't get your opinion on Lewis Hall yesterday because you weren't on the show, but I just want to get your opinion on it now. Lewis Hall, what do you make of your brother signing for Newcastle United potentially?
Great name.
Great name.
Yeah, great name. Now, very, very exciting, mate. Very exciting. I mean, I must admit, when his name came up a few weeks, possibly even a couple of months back, I just thought we're not going to get him. Chelsea aren't going to let him go. He's probably one of the standout youngsters in the Premier League who's literally come onto the scene and made an instant impact. Like, there's highlight reels of him playing he's only made 12 senior appearances, and when you watch the highlight reels, you just think Jesus, and he's done that in the space of less than 12 or less games.
Yeah,
it's very, very impressive, and the ceiling's incredibly high for him, isn't it? And the fact he's only 18 years old, and what makes it even sweeter, and I know that we shouldn't base our signings on this, and I'm not suggesting that we do this going forward as a necessity, but the fact that he's got those Geordie links, that excites me even more, because I think it's going to mean that little bit more to him, and you get that little bit extra out of him. He's doing it for his family, so to speak. And I always like when you've got links to the club, because I think that the player, will kind of give more. We've seen, the likes of Dan Burn coming in, who's been a breath of fresh air since he joined from Brighton. A lot of eyebrows raised over him. And, regularly we see Sean Longstaff, we see Elliot Anderson. So it's great to have Jacob Murphy, who I know isn't from Newcastle, but he's a Newcastle supporter. It's just great to have links to the club. And I think, some people as well saying, 30 million, are they mad, are they crazy? That's the going rate these days. If you want to bring in players who are, either real high prospects or players who have proven that they can do it in the Premier League, you're going to pay a premium, and that's just the way it is. So I've got no problem with paying, what is it, 28, 30, 31 million, whatever they say it is, because potentially he could be Newcastle's left back for the next 10, 15 years. So when we look back in 3 or 4 years' time, and hopefully we're playing Champions League football and we've got a couple of trophies in our trophy cabinet, we're going to be looking back at that 31 million and going, a bit of a bargain that he's only 24. You know what I mean? So straight away, I just think it's a great time. And I know you boys did the show the other night on a watch, which was brilliant in regards to Tierney, Cucurella, and Hall, and you all said Hall was number one. So when it came out, that he was he was there, being linked, and it now sounds like he's going to be someone who will bring it in on a permanent basis. It's just brilliant.
Definitely. LB, I don't know how much you know about Lewis Hall. He's a young lad, obviously coming through from Chelsea. Played a few games last season. What have you made of that deal? 28 million rising to 35 potentially. Good deal. Have you seen much of him?
Well, yeah, I've actually seen quite a lot of him because he played 12 games last year, and 2 of them were against Manchester City. So I did actually see quite a bit of him last season, and I've got to say he was actually pretty impressive, to be honest with you boys. Like I remember coming away from the match thinking, you know what, geez, he actually played quite well there. So I think. I can't remember which one it was, but there was one where he really impressed to the point where he was like almost man of the match. I think it was the first one. Whatever the first, because we played him in the Carabao Cup, knocked him out. Played him in the FA Cup, knocked him out. Whatever the first one was, I can't remember which one it was. If anyone ever has any spare time, go and rewatch that match. He was awesome. He was probably the best player on the day. He was probably unlucky to not score, actually. I remember he had a few chances and Ortega made the saves. But listen, it's crazy money, obviously. 30 million quid for a guy that's played, 1,000 senior minutes. But as I said earlier, the market is the market. Like, you can say that about Lewis Hall, but you'll be saying about everyone. Every single signing that you make now, everyone's overpriced, everyone's overpaid. So I'm just kind of just not asked about the fees anymore, boys. Like, it's got to the point now where it's just so silly that, like, everyone knows they're silly. Like, so when anyone mentions the fee for Lewis Hall, just, everyone's overpaid, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a great signing. You're paying for potential. And, he's got a great manager, hasn't he? Eddie Howe, great at working with young players. So I'm excited to see how he gets on, man. I'm excited. Is he English? Yeah.
Yeah, English.
Yeah. Good to see how he gets on, man.
Definitely. I'm just going to steal the chat just for a second, Chris.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
N9 has put in, I was on a Chelsea Twitter space last night, and they are fuming. Always a good sign when you're selling club don't want to lose a player. You are absolutely right. And I said this, I've said this to a few people, actually. I spoke to a couple of people the other day. It's always a really good sign. I said it on Saeed's channel tonight. When Chelsea fans are not happy about the fact that they're losing a top young talent. I sent a couple of messages to Lewis G last night about it, and he's playing it down, but on his streams, on his channel, like, you can tell he's not happy. Like, he's accepting of the fact that he's going to go, and he accepts why. Because you talked about it just now, Chris, about his links to Newcastle. He gets it. He understands. Like, he's going to be wanting to go and play for a club that he supported. But they're not happy about it. That's always a good sign. And N9, great to see that you're loving life in other club spaces and in YouTube channels, bigging it up. But N9, it does come and support when we're on other channels as well. So he's a good one, that's for sure. We're thankful for your support. Moving on from that, we've touched on it just a little bit, so I want to touch on it again. Kevin De Bruyne, is this going to hamper your season? The reason why I say this is because, and I'll throw him out there again, Gunnar Lee. If you don't know Gunnar Lee, you know Gunnar Lee, LB?
Yeah, I've done a stream with him, yeah.
Yeah, so you know some of his wild takes sometimes. He puts it out there. He is convinced that Arsenal are winning the league now that Kevin De Bruyne is injured. Because obviously it's looking like it's going to be, as you said before, 2024 before he kicks a ball in anger again for Man City. How much, in your opinion, does Kevin De Bruyne affect your season now that he's going to be out for up to 4 months?
Nowhere near as much as people are gassing it up to be, honestly. So, listen, Champions League, knockout stages don't start until February and March time. They'll be back by then. City, I'm sorry, we're treble winners. Whoever we get in the group stage, I'm not being arrogant, you know what I mean? It's just a fact that we should qualify out of the group stage, regardless of who we get. We're a seeded team. We're in pot 1, so we can't play any of the big hitters. You get one decent team in pot 2. pot 3 and pot 4 usually are games that we win. So that's not arrogance. It's just like based on odds, we should be qualifying out of the group stage without Kevin De Bruyne. You have no FA Cup games until after Christmas, so the FA Cup's not impacted, and the Carabao Cup, again, we should be able to do all right there. In terms of the league, I'm telling you now, all we need to do is stay within touching distance of the top of the table by the time Kevin De Bruyne comes back in January. Everyone knows that Manchester City do really well in the sort of the running, at which point Kevin De Bruyne will be fit because he's not kicked a ball all season, and he should be fresh for it as well. So I'm obviously, as a City fan, I'm trying to take the positives out of this. I'm not going to sit here and be like, season's over, forget it. But I just think people are gassing it up way too much. Of course, it's going to be a loss, and in individual games, you may go, "Oh, if Kevin De Bruyne was there, they would have done better." But in terms of the actual impact on the season, I think that I don't think it's going to have the impact that people are thinking.
Interesting, Chris. Kevin De Bruyne, when you saw the news that he was going to be out for up to 4 months, what was your reaction in relation to this big game on Saturday? But what do you think? Like, are you in agreement with LB that a lot of people are gassing it up in terms of having an impact on the overall kind of objectives of Man City, or do you think it's going to be a little bit like what Lee Gunnar talked about tonight, in that it's going to massively impact Man City and potentially winning the league for the 4th time in a row?
I mean, let's get it straight. Man City are a fantastic team, fantastic squad, fantastic manager. Yes, Kevin De Bruyne's a miss. He's a miss for any team. He would be fantastic player, arguably one of the best midfielders the Premier League's seen. That's how highly I rate him. Am I pleased he's missing on Saturday? Yes. Obviously, I'm disappointed that he's out for so many months, because you never like to see a player out for a long period of time, and hopefully he recovers fine and everything. In terms of Man City derailing and potentially, struggling to retain 4 in a row, the 4th Premier League in a row, I don't think it's going to have as much of a big impact as some people are saying. So I agree with LB on that. I think yes, he'll be a miss, but if they go and sign Paqueta next week, Paqueta could come in and arguably refresh that Man City midfield. I don't think it's going to have that big of a dent. For me, I think, and LB, tell me if you think I'm chatting a load of rubbish here, I think potentially losing Mahrez may have, could have an equally big impact, in my opinion, because I was a massive fan of Mahrez. And I know Gundogan's gone as well, and Gundogan, has particularly good seasons for City of late in the last 2 or 3 seasons. But for me, I actually think, Mahrez being out as well, having gone to Saudi Arabia, I think that could have just as big an impact in my opinion. Anyway, are you worried about Mahrez and Gundogan leaving at all, LB, or do you think you've got enough in reserve, if you like?
Yeah, no, it's a fair comment, because for me, these are massively underrated players. Ilkay Gundogan was one of the smartest football players I've ever seen step out on a football pitch. You know what I mean? The stuff that he's done with Dortmund, City, and Germany, he's a very, very complete footballer. And as good as the signing of Kovacic is for 25 million, he can't do what Gundogan did. Mahrez, again, I was disappointed to see him go. I was saying to people, listen, people gassing it up because we got £30 million for him and he's 32. And people saying it's the 3rd highest transfer fee for any player over the age of 30. I said, great, go replace his goals and assists with 30 million. You won't do it. So it's all well and good getting cash in, but you've got to get the player to replace the numbers ultimately at the end of the day. So listen, they're all going to be misses, but the way I see it is, you kind of you've got to have a little bit of trust and faith in the board and in the manager. We've lost Vincent Kompany, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, Fernandinho. You know what I mean? We've been all right. So if people think I'm going to be sat here and writing the season off because Kevin De Bruyne's going to miss the first 3 months of an injury, where really is how important is the first 3 months? Not really. It's the business end of the season where you want him. Then, I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen, man. You know what I mean? I'm staying positive. I'm treble winners, man. You know what I mean? I can't just sit here and crumble at the first sign of trouble. Jeez.
He's throwing it out there, throwing bombs out there. Treble winners, man. Treble winners. I love it. But I'm not gonna lie. I kind of hope there's some disappointment in the changing rooms. So it does have an impact on them, certainly on Saturday. I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping it has a little bit of an impact going into the game. It's at the Etihad. Tough place for us to go. That is for sure. Look, we're at the time where we're going to start getting into the game, looking at tactics and various other things with regards to the game. But of course, we need some stats.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
I like LB's like, what the hell is going on?
Oh my God, to here. What the hell?
I like Magic Key appears. Keith Roll, 00 Stato, the thriller. How are you on this fine Thursday evening, my friend?
Not so bad. I hope everyone's well. We just had to change it up because people were getting too used to the other theme, weren't they? In introduction, so we needed to change that up.
It was a good theme. It was a good theme, but equally, the thriller is back. And look, we need some stats for this week. Massive game. What stats have you got for us this week? Man City against Newcastle.
I've got a load of stats here, but I'm just going to add a disclaimer here now. This is going to be really bumpy for Newcastle. So please, no hate in the chat, okay? Because this is going to be bumpy here. I've got loads of head-to-head stats. I've got some stats as well on players, focusing on certain players with both teams. Got some manager stats, and then rounding off some general stats. Newcastle's record against Manchester City in the Premier League since 93-94. Played 46 matches, won 8, drawn 9, lost 29. So weighted more towards Man City there, especially in recent years. Number of goals in this fixture in the Premier League, 140, 97 for Manchester City, 43 goals for Newcastle. And Man City have also got the better defensive record in this fixture as well, 21 clean sheets to Newcastle's 8 clean sheets. Newcastle have won just one of their past 31 Premier League games against Manchester City. 1 win, 5 draws and 25 defeats, with the 1 win being the 2-1 win at home in January 2019, which I think Miguel Almiron signed for the club on that evening as well. So it shows you quite a while since Newcastle's last win in the league. Newcastle haven't beaten Manchester City away in Manchester for 23 years since Alan Shearer scored the winner in a 1-0 win at Main Road when Erling Haaland's dad, Alfie Ingle Haaland, was playing for Manchester City. So that's how long ago it was since Newcastle won a league game down there. Newcastle have never won a Premier League game at the Etihad Stadium. 2 draws, 16 defeats in the league. It's the most that any team has played a specific venue without ever winning in Premier League history. Yes. I'm only about 6 in, lads. I will try to lift it at the end. Manchester City have won 6 of the last 7 league games against Newcastle, netting a minimum of 3 goals in their 4 of their last 5 games. And moving on to players, Callum Wilson, he's got 2 goals and 1 assist in 9 games against Manchester City. And since the start of last season, Callum Wilson's scored the most Premier League goals as a substitute than any other player in the Premier League. 5 goals he's scored since he's came off the bench in games. Erling Haaland, he scored 52 goals in 53 games for Man City last season. And the most a Man City player scored in a single season. And he's also scored 38 league goals in 36 Premier League appearances. So absolutely phenomenal there from Erling Haaland. Kevin De Bruyne, you were just speaking about him earlier there. Last season, he scored 7 goals and 16 goal scoring assists in 32 games for Manchester City. And overall, since he's moved to Manchester City in 2015, in league games alone, he's scored 64 goals and he's had 101 goal scoring assists in 240 Premier League appearances. So just absolutely brilliant player. But how will they do without him, and who might be in his place? Might see Phil Foden. Phil Foden, he scored 11 goals and 5 goals scoring assists in 32 games for Manchester City last season. And that's his best return so far as a Manchester City player in a season. Moving on to goalkeepers, Nick Pope last season, 14 clean sheets in 37 league games for Newcastle. And Edison, he had 11 clean sheets in 35 league games for Manchester City last year. And he's now got over 100 clean sheets in the Premier League for Manchester City in the league. The managers, Pep Guardiola, his record as Manchester City manager. Against Newcastle, he's managed 13 games. He's won 10, he's drawn 2, and he's lost 1. And he's won 11 games out of 12 he's managed against Eddie Howe's sides. Eddie Howe, his record against Man City, it's the 1 draw and the 12 defeats in 13. Some general stats to round off. Man City have won their past 14 Premier League home games against Newcastle in a run that goes back to 2007. And that run equals the record set by Everton as well, where they won 14 home games against Fulham in the Premier League. So can they beat that on Saturday, or can the run just stay intact? Man City have scored in their past 29 league games against Newcastle, which is the joint longest run against one team, and it's tied with Man United's run against Leicester. Man City had the best home record in the Premier League last season. They got 52 points from 57 points available at home. Only the 2-1 defeat against Brentford and the 1-1 draw against Everton were the only games they dropped points last year out of 17 games where they picked up maximum points out of 19. Following their 5-1 win over Aston Villa last weekend, Newcastle are looking to win both of their opening 2 games to a Premier League season for the first time since 1997-1998 season, when Kenny Dalglish was the manager. And that rounds off the stats.
Ooh, keep them coming, man.
LB's there with the cigar.
I told you I was going to round off. I told you I was going to round off with a positive stat.
It was, but like LB for most of that, we just kind of sitting back, big smile on his face, thinking, "I like."
How could I not, mate? How could I not? I thought I was on a Newcastle fan channel. I thought I was on a Manchester City fan channel then for a minute with all them positive stats coming out.
Lots of fans saying, lots of people in the chat saying, "Oh, we were buzzing until we heard these stats." But look,
I did put a disclaimer out there beforehand. I did try to positive it up. There was some positive Callum Wilson stats, and there was a positive stat at the end. But if you're talking head-to-head stats,
yeah, not good. But look, how many times have we said this, Keith, last season? Is that these stats are theirs to be broken? Some of these stats are like 14 odd years of Mike Ashley that we are now having to claw back. So he's going to take time. So, but look, more so than anything, massive thanks to you for those level of stats. Absolutely appreciate it and fantastic stuff. Want to get into the game though, and talk a little bit about the actual game. So, as we always do, we ask the opposition, the guest, to give his lineup, and hopefully you can see that on the screen. LB, does that formation for Man City look about right? To you?
No, not really. I'd change it up a little bit. I'd probably push Kovacic further forward. John
More like
Stones.
that?
This is on the ball formation because obviously, as
Yeah.
everyone does now, you have different formations. John Stones will push into midfield with Rodri.
So you're looking more of more like so you're talking on the ball then.
This is on the ball. Yeah, Rodri and Stones will be in the middle. And I think you've got the rest bang on there.
Okay. So from your perspective, and I'm going to come to Chris and Keith with their perspective on the Newcastle team. Look, this is how you think they're going to set up. It looks a strong team, as it always would be with Man City. But where in your opinion, looking at the lineup that I've put there, and Chris and Keith might have a different opinion on Newcastle's lineup, where do you think you can hurt Newcastle in this game at the Etihad to win it?
I don't know, man. It's difficult, isn't it? Because your defense is a very solid defense. I don't know. I don't think there's an normally, like you say, because I do this sort of thing on mine, and you look at areas of weakness, but I don't think there's a single area of weakness that I can see personally, or like a vulnerability. I guess it's just can we just do our thing, knock the ball around, and create a few chances for Haaland? Sorry to be like boring, but I don't think there is like a standard weakness. There's nowhere on that team that I can see for Newcastle that goes, yeah, that's where we target, boys. There's nowhere there. So I guess it's just a case of, just playing our game and try to create a few chances for the robot up front to bag.
How nice is it to hear that? We're an opposition fan, especially a Man City opposition fan, who's like, yeah, looks like a really good team. So no, really nice to hear that, LB. Really nice.
Absolutely spot on. It makes me laugh how he refers to Haaland as the robot, because he just is. He just is. And like, look, we've not even talked about it. You've got like a near £100 million player there sitting on the bench at Carvalho.
In fact, Pete, can I just come in? Sorry, mate. The only reason I want to come in is because I don't want to be too boring. There is one area that I've potentially identified, and that is Bernardo Silva on Dan Burn. Now, Dan Burn's done a fantastic job. But he's a big old lanky guy, isn't he? You know what I mean? And Bernardo Silva is a smaller player with a low centre of gravity, excellent ball control. And I just think if Bernardo Silva can stand Burn up one-on-one closer to the penalty area, and he's twisting and turning, you know what I mean? That's really the only thing that I can potentially think of. But that's not to say I don't rate Burn, because he's a great defender. But you know what I mean? I'm 6'3". You know what I mean? If I'm playing five-a-side football and the guy's smaller than me and he's got a low center of gravity, he's twisting and turning me all day long. It don't matter if I'm professional or not. That's just, the laws of physics, I guess. So that's probably the only thing that I can think of. And yeah, that's it really.
Would you agree with that, Chris?
I completely agree. And in fairness, LB, that's probably what we've been targeting, bringing in someone like Lewis Hall to basically prevent that, because you're right. Dan Burn's been an excellent servant since he's come in. Most will argue he is naturally a left centre-back. So really, he would probably, if we do bring in Lewis Hall, he will act as the understudy or the alternative option to Botman. That's really what his position is. I know he played left-back for Brighton, but naturally, he just doesn't look right playing left-back, because you're right. If he comes up against a shorter player who has that, that lower sense of gravity, it doesn't match up, does it? It doesn't match up. I mean, to be fair to Dan Burn, he came up against the likes of Anthony, he came up against Saka last season, and he did really, really well. That's not to say that he wasn't getting support. I mean, Joe Linton, that's why I love having Joe Linton on that left side of the midfield, because Joe Linton often comes in and helps out. Sven Botman will come across as well, to double up, triple up. And that is always a big plus. The thing that we lack most with Dan Burn really is when he goes forward, because if he does venture too far forward, obviously it leaves that gap and he struggles to get back. But defensively, he has been pretty sound. But we are talking about Bernardo Silva here, who is an absolutely fantastic player. So that I agree with you. I think that's probably the weak spot, as well as the robot. If you give him the ball right where he wants it, is there any defender in world football who's stopping him? I don't know.
Is there a weakness with pace at the back? You touched on it there, Burn, and obviously the movement as well. We've seen it at St James's Park in the corresponding fixture. Newcastle were 3-1 up. They were absolutely flying. They were looking to add to 3-1, and then all of a sudden, bang, 3-2 with Haaland with a movement from nowhere. It can happen that quick.
Right, Keith. Yeah,
I agree. For me, before we get into Newcastle, 2 areas. LB, you touched on Bernardo Silva, but I'm more worried about these runs in here from Foden. These runs in between the two. So Bernardo Silva will be occupied by Burn. Foden makes that run there. Joe Linton's got a massive job to stop that run. Now, physically, athletically, he's able to do it. But Joe Linton also likes to get forward and support the attack. And when you're away from home, is he gonna sacrifice getting forward here to be able to stop Foden playing in these areas? Because Foden will run in and connect with Bernardo Silva, and it's whether I trust Botman to be able to do a job here, but it's whether the midfield, whoever it is, whether it's Bruno getting back into this little pocket, Joe Linton there, being able to do the job. This is me being hypercritical, because I think they're more than capable of doing the job. That's for sure. My other issue is, and you've touched on it, Keith, quite rightly, is Haaland's runs not here, but in here, in between Trippier and Shaw. Now, we know at St James's Park against Liverpool, Pope got sent off, but the amount of running that was made by the attackers in this little section here, and if Trippier gets forward, there's a big gap in there to fill. And we know Haaland, he's a robot, but he's rapid. He can come in and affect the game massively in this little pocket of space here, and to keep them thinking. He's on his favoured left foot, balls into the box, anything in and around here, he's going to be pulling the trigger. So there's kind of 2 areas for me on that, from that perspective. But Chris, I'll come back to you on the flip side. This is the team that I've gone for. It's the same team ultimately that started against Aston Villa. Do you agree with it? Is there any need to change it? 5-1 winners? Talk to me. But equally, where do you think we can potentially hurt Man City with LB putting his team and setting his team up the way he has?
Yeah, I mean, with the way. Well, I'll start first of all with the lineup. I think your lineup's spot on, Pete. I can't see us changing the lineup, obviously, unless there's any injuries or anything like that. But yeah, I think we'll line up exactly the same way. The only thing you could argue, and it sounds madness to say it, and I'm just thinking out loud here, you could argue that maybe Eddie decides to take Tonali out and bring in Sean Longstaff, who is predominantly, I'd say he's probably got a better engine than Tonali, and he'll be more defensive than Tonali. May not happen, but just an observation, because we know how much Eddie Howe loves Sean Longstaff and the work rate that he gives you in the middle. That's whether or not that happens, I don't know. But other than that, I think the lineup is spot on, and it probably will be the team that we play. I think in terms of our threat, I mean, Pete, you know how big a fan I am of Alexander Isak. I think he can. I currently believe, and I know you boys have agreed, I currently believe he's the second best striker in the Premier League behind Haaland. And I think he could really cause Man City some problems, because as LB said, when they transition into that 3-2-2-3 formation, if we catch them quick enough on the break, and we know how quick Newcastle are in terms of getting that ball forward, if you've got a one-on-one with Isak over Diaz, I'd fancy my odds with that. So that for me, that'll be the biggest threat, to get the ball forward as quickly as possible. Gordon one-on-one with Walker. We know Walker's really quick. But Gordon could spring a surprise there. Who knows? Miggy Almiron, although he's got a tendency to cut in on his left, Nathan Ake is a left-footed centre back, so that could cause a few problems. If Miggy cuts in on his left and he forces Ake to kind of have to deal with him on his right foot, that again could be an issue. I think for me, it's about getting the ball forward as quickly as possible and transition as quick as possible, because I'm assuming that we're going to be playing a very counter-attacking game, which is what we're used to doing, but it's how quickly we can transition from defence to attack. And if we can do it quickly, we could cause City problems. And I did see that yesterday from Sevilla. LB, I'm sure you watched the match yesterday, and there was moments where it was like, how on earth of Man City ended up with like a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2 situation against Sevilla because they were getting the ball up very, very quickly. And I'm hoping, when I was watching this last night, I was thinking, oh God, we could do this. Whether City will line up differently against us, I don't know. Pep, I'm sure, will have all this worked out and figured out. But that would be the key things for me.
No, great points. I have to say, but we'll touch on a couple of them in just a second. But Keith, anything to add to that with regards to where you think Newcastle could potentially win the game? Do you agree, firstly, of the lineup, like myself and Chris?
Yeah.
That didn't sound convincing. Come on.
Yeah, I'm just sort of
something?
breaking it down there. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the lineup, really. I sort of agree there. Would you stick Barnes in rather than, you had the end product.
You did.
Why change that end winning team, really?
He did.
He was clinical. He was on points.
Is he not more hardworking as well than Gordon, Harvey Barnes? Would you say, is that fair or is that not fair? I don't know. This genuine question. I don't know.
I would say, look, Chris, Keith, disagree with me if you do. I think Gordon is more hardworking than Barnes, but Barnes
more industrious.
I see, and I keep using this word to describe Barnes. I see Barnes as a killer.
Yeah,
Barnes
in that final third. Yeah.
He'll put the ball in the net. He would, like, on the counter attack, as Chris quite rightly said. I was going to touch on this in a second, but we'll talk about it now. It's like on the counter attack, like Chris said, if we can get that on a 3-on-3 situation with Isaac, Almiron, and either Gordon or Barnes, if we're in that situation on a 3-on-3, I would back Barnes 100% to put the ball in the net because he's a killer. He knows where the goal is. He'll put it away. He's already proven that for Newcastle already in the few games that he's played. But is it going to be a game that's better suited to an industrial player? Certainly for the long part of the game to really kind of grind Man City down. I don't know. It's a great question that you brought, Keith, about Gordon and Barnes. It's an interesting. And it kind of gets.
There's definitely going to be opportunities and times where you would probably, as you say, the industrious, you would want somebody like a Gordon in, whereas you've got the proven class of. But with me, it's with end product, and sometimes I just can't get away from end product, And Barnes did it on his debut. He did it in the friendly the week earlier as well. I think. What your points about Tonali and Longstaff before, I think you've got to go with Tonali, because I think he'd be able to, in a game like this, I think he'd be able to intercept some of the danger in the man. He would be my bet out of the two to intercept some of that danger, really. So I would definitely go with Tonali. I think your defense is probably as strong as it'll probably get, really, at this stage. And in attack, it's harsh, and it's at the minute I kind of really it's like a 41-50. It's like a 49-51 percentage thing with Isaac and Wilson. But again, it's very marginal. And it's harsh. But Isaac got the 2 goals last weekend, didn't he? And that, I think, was it the second one? It was absolutely class, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That lobbing effort at the Gallagher. So, I would like something like that on Saturday if Wilson comes in at some part and adds to his 5 goals as a substitute.
Definitely. But just before we wrap up this section and go to predictions and all the rest of it, Chris, you talked about the counter-attacking football that we're likely to play in this part. I don't know if you guys watched it, and LB, you would have, when Brentford beat Man City at the Etihad last season. It was kind of what they did, exactly that. They hit Man City on the break really quickly and isolated them to make it a matchup of 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 4-on-4, and they managed to hit Man City really quickly in order to get their goals, in order to win the game. And I would back Newcastle to do that. That's 110%. The one thing I've got a question on is that I saw the goal. I think I saw the first goal. Well, not the first goal, but the only goal that Sevilla scored yesterday. And it was in the air, and it surprised me how weak Man City were in defending that aerially. Now, I don't know if that's an issue for you, LB. Is that an issue for you?
No. What you need
set pieces.
No, not at all. We've got one of the best set piece records in the country. What I would say is I won't read too much into the Seville game in terms of our defence, because it was Walker, Akanji, Ake, and Gvardiol. Well, Diaz is back, and so is John Stones. So straight away, Ake, will it be Ake? Will it be Gvardiol left back? Who knows? But John Stones and Diaz, if they're both all right, should come back into the centre of the pitch. And that goal doesn't happen if John Stones and Diaz is there. That's just a fact. So, yeah, no issues with that. It's a one-off game, and you won't see that partnership again.
Fair play. Look, we talked on the tactics board, probably longer than we anticipated, but really good chat, good opinions as well, and good suggestions from both sides of things. It'll be interesting to see how we manage with that different setup. With Man City, with Stones coming into the midfield, and how we kind of counteract that. It's going to be really interesting from our perspective, as well as LB looking at how we're going to do things from a Newcastle perspective, that's for sure. But look, we're getting towards those prediction times, but just before that, are there any kind of burning questions, maybe one or two, Chris, that you want to fly and throw LB's way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a couple of good ones in actually that I wanted to ask LB. Stu Amos asks LB, how close do you think Newcastle are to being a genuine title threat?
Good question.
Oh, yeah, that's the question that you all want to know, isn't it? Look at Pete. Look at Pete. Look at him. How close do I see them being a title threat? I still think a good 2-3 years. Now, the reason I think it's a good 2-3 years is because I just think you've got a plan, and I think Newcastle don't strike me as the team that's going to rush it. You look at Chelsea, right? Bowley at Chelsea, he's clearly trying to rush things to get Chelsea up the table as quickly as possible and get them fighting for the title again. All well and good, but he spent £1 billion in 12 months, 18 months, right? Newcastle are not trying to do that. Newcastle are trying to do it the right way. They're trying to be a sustainable football club. And as I've said to Pete before, they will get there, but I just think it's going to take a few years. And Newcastle fans just need to have patience with that, which I think is a completely reasonable thing to say. You've also got to deal with going from a club last year that had no European football to a team now that is looking to qualify for the Champions League again, which, by the way, brings its own pressures, because fans will have their own pressures on the players and the manager to get them back in the Champions League. I think opposition teams will respect Newcastle a lot more this year than they did last year, because I feel like they'll respect how good Newcastle are. That could again bring more problems. You've got to deal with the Champions League this year. That's a game every 3 or 4 days, and I don't think Newcastle are going. I don't know. I don't think Newcastle are going to the Champions League there just to take part. I think they want to get out of that group stage. Now, of course, no one knows who they're going to get in the group stage, and once you see the group, you might be reassessing that sort of goal. But I think Newcastle want to try and at least make it to the round of 16. I think Newcastle are desperate for a trophy, right? You are desperate for a trophy, aren't you, boys? You know what I mean? Like, so again, you're going to have to go for. This is why I said on the show recently. I don't know if you was on the show, Pete, but I said. It was a real shame, not just because you played Man United, but it was a real shame that Newcastle didn't win a trophy last year. Because if you did, you could potentially have took the domestic cups a little bit easier this year and really focused on the Premier League and really focused on that Champions League. But I don't think he can really do that, Eddie Howe, because you're not going to win the Premier League this year. You're not going to win the Champions League. So I still think there's a need and a necessity for Newcastle United to win that trophy. So I just think there's a number of challenges for Newcastle to face in the next few years, with the pressures of the trophy, pressures of getting a trophy, pressures of re-qualifying for the Champions League and getting out of the group stage of the Champions League. But I have no doubts that in due time, Newcastle will achieve those goals. I just think that it's going to take a few years. So my advice as a fan who's been through this process, Fucking enjoy the ride, boys. That's what I'm going to tell you, man. Enjoy the ride.
You know what? I don't know what Keith, Chris. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm loving the ride, but like I would love it and enjoy it even more if we had a trophy just in the cabinet already, just to kind of look at it and just enjoy that moment. I think the ride will be very much more enjoyable once we get that moment of securing a trophy, whatever that may be, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, Premier League, Champions League, whatever it may be. Chris, Keith, am I right? He's similar. Oh, you're on mute, Chris. 1 second.
Every show I do it. Sorry. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's getting that out the way, isn't it? Because once we get that first trophy, you would hope that that winning mentality will come. The players will go into games with a little bit of confidence, thinking we can win this. Because I do think, and Pete, you'll probably remember because we were sat together watching it. There was that element of not having the experience of winning stuff. And I think as soon as we have that, and as soon as we're used to winning trophies, we'll see, the players kind of grow, and then they'll demand more from themselves. And I think that, these big occasions, they won't be overawed by them because they'll just become the norm. And, having players in your team who have trophies under the belt, it does make a massive difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I want Newcastle to get to the latter stage and maybe get to a final and be a bit more clinical. I mean, they've only, in the times since they've went to Wembley, since 1976, they've only scored twice in 2 games, So I want to see Newcastle a lot more clinical, be industrious, but be clinical with it. And, I think it certainly does help get, acquiring somebody like Tonali, who has won Serie A with AC Milan, getting a winner in the team as well, getting a bit more pedigree there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I just wanted to address something just before we get to predictions. A lot of people are put into the chat and saying about Stones being injured. But obviously, LB, you put him in your team for Saturday. Okay. Is he injured? Is he going to play?
Okay, so basically, I don't fully understand what's happened. So he picked up a knock, and then he was like, yeah, he's going to be injured. But then he was on the bench and trained with the team, and it was all fine. And then there was a couple of rumors going around today that potentially his hamstring's gone, but I've not seen that has been confirmed by any reliable source. So at the moment, I'm saying he's fit and he's ready, but there is a chance that he might not be fit. But in that case, we'll just have to put new boy Josko Gvardiol in there instead, lads. You know what I mean? So that's not a bad replacement. Yes, it's not the worst situation in the world, man.
Could be a Guardiola mind game, a bit like a Ten Hag mind game before the cup final.
It could be. You know, quick point on that final. I don't know if you guys might take this the wrong way or not, but I think in that final that you played against United last year, I think Eddie Howe did the wrong thing because you were the better team in that game.
Yeah.
And I said after 20 minutes, Newcastle get beat here because Man United, they want you to do that because they're still a counter-attacking team. Some United fans will have you believe that they play nice football. They still don't play nice football.
What did I say to you this week? I said it on the channel. I said that I didn't like it. Man United is still a counter-attacking team.
Yeah, they're still a counter-attacking team. And I think, actually, you played into their hands a little bit. And you were the better team, and you should have won the game. But United wanted you to do that. I think what he should have done, really, is said, you know what, United, you have the ball because you don't do anything with the ball because you're rubbish when you've got the ball, which they are. And we will just stick in there, and at some point, we'll get a goal from a set piece or get some quality. I actually thought he'd done the wrong thing. I thought he tried to take the game to Man United, and I knew straight away, man, after 15 minutes, I was like, United are going to win this.
I'll be honest, your hatred for Man United is getting people happy in the chat. They appreciate that, but not the fact that you're referring to them as United, because in terms of calendar-wise, over the years, we are the original United before anybody else.
Bro, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to sit here argue with you on that. You can call them a lot worse things than United if you want, bro. You know what I mean?
we have to remind people of that. But obviously, of course, you'll be bang on that, LB as well. But before we get to predictions, one more question. Any one question, Chris, that stands out for you?
Any one question?
And there's been some great questions tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, there absolutely has. Yes, I really like this one again. Tom's been flying with the questions tonight. Tom asks, when Pep Guardiola does retire or step down, what manager would you like to take over from him?
Ooh.
Don't say Eddie Howe.
No, I want Vincent Kompany. I want Vincent Kompany. Listen, the last decade or so, I've been on a mad ride. Yeah, I've seen Mancini win the title in the most spectacular way. Pellegrini come and played some incredible direct football, and Pep Guardiola winning the treble, winning our first Champions League. I think to bring in, after all that success, to bring in a player that was there at the beginning of our sort of revolution, if you want to call it that, and has plays good football. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to sort of bring it in, and I know sometimes it doesn't work out, but it won't taint his legacy for me as a fan. If it don't work out, he'll go. Now, of course, De Zerbi is doing incredible things at Brighton, and I'm sure he'll be on the list. But me as a fan, I'm ready. I'm calling for it, man. I'm calling for Vincent Kompany to come in. And by the way, that's not the majority of City fans. I'm in a minority there, but. And of course, that is caveated with the fact that Burnley don't just go and lose the next 37 games in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? He's got to do all right with Burnley in the league this year and next year. But yeah, providing he does, which I think he will, because he seems to be playing good football with them. I want Vinny in.
He did well against you, actually, didn't he? On the first game.
Lacked a striker though, didn't they, Chris? They didn't really have anyone that could put the ball in the net. Every time they got the ball forward, it was like, well, where are you going with it now? But moving the ball around the football pitch, they did well.
Yeah, definitely.
Good team. Right. Questions out. Thank you so much for those that haven't that have put questions in. We haven't answered it. I apologize. Want to obviously keep it quite tight tonight. But look, we're going to get down to predictions. Just before predictions, we've had nearly 300 in the chat tonight. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting the channel. If you haven't clicked like right now, click like. I know it's slightly more difficult if you're watching it on TV. We were talking about it the other night. But if you can get onto your phone and click like, it only takes just a second. But more importantly, as Chris quite rightly and very timely puts on the screen, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. Subscribe to the channel. And of course, brilliant stuff as always. Prediction time. Chris, I'm going to come to you first. What is it going to be at 10 o'clock at night, whenever it is, because it's a late kickoff, the score against Man City?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this, so I've been agonising over it for the past 5 or 10 minutes. My gut feeling is saying 1-1. So I'm going to stick with 1-1.
I'm going to go Desmond.
I nearly went Desmond's.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a Desmond. I'm not going to lie. Now, I may get stick for this. We may get stick for this, Brandy and Blaze. We're not normally offense kind of guys. We're not. But I'm going for a Desmond. Chris, you're going for a 1-1. LB, Man City side, are you confident? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm confident, of course. It's not going to be an easy game. So I think a 2-0 victory. Our defense is looking very strong. It's looking very strong. So I think, I think I keep a clean sheet and get the ball into the robot man, and he'll put the ball in the back of the net. So 2-0, but good game, close game.
I want to add, LB, last season at the Etihad, we had Shaw was injured. We had Lascelles. Lascelles had
a really good game.
We had him. It was one of his best games for the club. He had him on toast. So I'm not saying Lascelles was going to play, but Shaw will be in there. Different type of player, but throw that out there. Right, of course, we always come to the main man, 00 Stato, Dr. Doom, whatever you want to call him, the thriller. Keith, are you on the fence with us for a change, or are you gonna fly high? What are you going for?
I can see 2 potential outcomes here. So I'm going to give me prediction what my head says, and then I might give people what they want. Okay. So, right. I'm looking at this. This sort of fixture reminds me of Man United at Old Trafford. You know, especially those stats that I was saying earlier. 17 wins out of 19 in the league last year. Only one defeat. I think it's been obviously since 2018, Newcastle have not scored a goal at the Etihad Stadium. So 4.5 games, Newcastle have not scored a goal. But I think Newcastle are going to end their long run and will score on Saturday night. But I think it might be too much. And I think you're right, LB, what you're saying about the robot there, Haaland. And this is what I think my head is saying will happen. Home score to Manchester City.
Ooh.
But you just don't know. Those riggers might have an impact on it as well from the Super Cup last night. And you never know, we might see this on Saturday night. So just to make people happy, heart and head predictions there.
Oh, so we've gone for 2 predictions. 3-1 Man City, but a potential 1-1 draw alongside Keith. And you know what? Fair play to you. It's going to be interesting. I'm so excited about this game. I genuinely think that I think Newcastle. I'm not saying we're going to win. I'm not saying we're going to get a point, whatever. But I think that we're going to surprise a few people. Not necessarily. Go on.
It could be a good time. It could be the good time, if not the best time, to play Man City, because early in the season, like we did last year at St James's with a 3-3, as opposed to when they're on the championship running. Last year, when Arsenal was going there and they got thumped and they just weren't dropping any points, it's probably a better time to play them.
I only said this earlier to someone, Keith. I said, you know what, this is the perfect time to play City at the Etihad, especially given the Super Cup win through the week and the fact that we're coming off the back of a 5-1 win against Villa, and hopefully, and LB won't like me saying this, but hopefully, there's a little bit of a come down from De Bruyne being out and losing a couple of players. He could play into our hands, because the problem with City is, as soon as they get in their rhythm, they're very, very difficult to stop. And I think once they do get in a rhythm, it will be very difficult for anybody to stop them, let alone us. So the fact that we're getting them early, I like to get the harder games out the way early on, because you never quite know what you're going to get.
And also as well, even though we're not playing too much into it in the Super Cup yesterday, it still wasn't the easiest to work out for City. I mean, going to go behind and it going to penalty, extra time and all that penalties, it still wasn't the easiest to work out. So it's bound to have a little bit of rig on them.
Definitely. But look, we're out of time. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for all the questions, comments, and opinions in the chat. We love it as always. LB, absolute pleasure on your debut on Loaded Mag NUFC for joining us. Where can we find you? For anyone that doesn't already know.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is It's LB, and it's mainly City content, but there is other stuff out there as well. And then I do shows with Pete on what's it called, 12th Man podcast as well. So yeah, just anywhere that'll have me, really, boys.
Love it. And of course, Double O Stato, Keith, always a pleasure, never ever a chore. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday evening. And of course, the main man, Chris Hall, Brandy and Blaze, back again, 23-24 season. Guys, we're out. Of course, check out our reaction show over the weekend, hopefully celebrating a win. But until then, we do love playing away. You guys have a great evening and take care. Speak to you soon.